Thank you, Jim, for your introduction, and thanks, Ian and Gary, for opening the conference with your brilliant presentations. You've really set the bar extremely high for those of us who have to follow. My Nuffield starts with a question. If we were to start dairy farming tomorrow, what would we change and what would we keep the same? From my involvement in the equine industry, I've started to see that sector asking similarly uncomfortable questions, and I've come to the realisation that these questions extend beyond agriculture and into every industry that involves animals. It's easy to dismiss these questions as misinformation or a lack of understanding, but dairy farming must retain its social licence if it is to continue, and key to that is to listen to consumers. Research shows that we can't educate people into accepting practices that they find ethically wrong. We must challenge ourselves to do better. During the course of my scholarship, the euthanasia of dairy bull calves was effectively banned in the UK, but the stigma of it endures, and we must be careful to build a market for dairy beef calves to avoid them becoming the industry's next problem. However, we can't let dairy beef calves become another industry's issue, a lesson we can see perfectly displayed by the racing industry. Many of the horses that end up in slaughterhouses are years away from their racing careers, but racehorses don't cease to be racing's problem when they leave the industry. Their lifelong care is essential to retaining social licence. And similarly, the lifelong care and outcomes of dairy beef calves are critical to retaining dairy's social licence. I started off with a broad remit, starting with looking at how the number of dairy bull calves could be reduced for making the best use of sexed semen, particularly in block calving systems like our own. Through what I learned, I actually had the confidence to go home, and we now implement a policy of only using sexed and beef semen. I then wanted to see beef systems around the world that reared dairy beef calves as an economically, environmentally and ethically sound business model, and I wanted to see how we as dairy farmers can ensure that our calves meet their requirements. So I went to feedlots like the one you can see in the photo, I went to Denmark and I went to Chile, and I also learned from Germany about their Brother Bull programme. In another example of great cross-industry learning, this is based on their poultry industry's Brother Cock programme, and I learned the hard way not to Google that. But as time went on, my focus narrowed to the two final points on my slides. Can the dairy industry adopt cow-calf contact dairying on a wider scale without relying on added value milk sales? And how do these different systems align with farmer and consumer wants? And on a pan-industry scale, what can we learn from racing, and what can racing learn from us? So every year, 7,000 horses finish racing in the UK, and their aftercare is a crucial point of racing's social licence. These horses mostly leave racing and become part of a wider equine industry, similar to the bull and beef calves that are born on dairy farms but end up in the beef industry. Both industries must ensure that these animals have a market and are well cared for. Creating a demand and equipping the wider industry with the resources to take care of ex-racehorses is something the racing industry has done extremely well, although it does have a financial cost. In the UK, Canada, and the United Arab Emirates, I saw aftercare programmes that have succeeded in making ex-racehorses into highly desirable and valued leisure and competition animals. In Australia, Racing Victoria run a comprehensive strategy covering horses from cradle to grave and encouraging practices in racing that lead to better prospects out of it. What I found that had the biggest application for dairy calves was their categorisation of horses and the way they then allocate resources according to their needs. If we did this with calves, better resources could be provided to low-value calves that need supply chain support and subsidy, while a well-grown Belgian blue calf could find its own home without any intervention. By categorising horses, Racing Victoria is able to allocate resources effectively and without waste, giving all animals the best opportunities for their future. Could we do something similar with dairy beef calves? Cow-calf contact is a dairy system where cows and calves are kept together. If it is to be defined, I think it needs to be a system where calves are kept with their mothers, whether biological or foster, for at least the length of time they would be on milk in a conventional dairy system, so a minimum of 8 weeks. There's no one way to do it. It exists across all different systems, and there's many different ways of implementing it in terms of the amount and length of contact. In the UK, we often associate it with small-scale farms selling branded milk, as these tend to be the ones in the public eye, as of course they rely on marketing to sell their products. However, it exists on farms of all sizes and systems, and the largest known to me is a 1,000-cow robot herd in Germany. In Norway, around 4% of dairy farms are believed to already practice cow-calf contact, and another 15% are considering it. There's been no government or industry intervention to encourage this. The change has been driven by farmers themselves. Interestingly, and this is a trend I saw all over the world, cow-calf contact farms in Norway are disproportionately led by women. The situation there is now such that industry bodies need to employ people who understand cow-calf contact, and the leading manufacturer of cattle sheds in the country say that every shed they now build is designed for cow-calf contact. These farmers may not be ready for the change in the next year, but they foresee that within the lifespan of that shed, they will be implementing this system. The dairy industry in Norway is quota-driven, has a high prevalence of robots and an average herd size of just 30 cows. As such, it may not seem comparable to the UK dairy industry, and is certainly very different to the farm we manage in Wales. Therefore, I travelled a little further to countries of large-scale, block calving, pasture-based herds. The two farms that really stand out to me as examples of what can be achieved with this system were in Australia and New Zealand. In northern Victoria, Rasheen and Ron Powles experimented with different types of cow-calf contact for a decade before making the move 3 years ago to a fully dam-reared system. In New Zealand, Chris Faulkner owns a once-a-day flying herd where all calves are kept with their mothers and weaned at around 11 weeks of age. Both farms were positive about the changes they had implemented, with no impact on financial performance or animal health. Milk was sold on conventional contracts, although Chris has a small volume of direct sales, with the profit split with the local Maori community. Across the world, cow-calf contact is gathering momentum and becoming more commonplace. Done well, it is possible to maintain or exceed the health outcomes seen on conventional farms and make the same financial returns. Not running calves as a separate group can bring benefits in time and resource management, and there are possibly longer-term benefits for suckled heifers when they enter the milking herd, as they will be less stressed having already experienced the adult cow environment. And this is particularly important when we reflect on the high rate of heifers in conventional systems that don't transition well and fail to reach their second calving. Calves show better growth and realise higher prices, and all of the farms I visited stressed that this system brought mental health benefits to themselves and to their cows. However, there are challenges to its implementation. Foster systems are perhaps the easiest to manage, but they involve separation of a cow and her biological calf, and studies show that they are perceived as negatively as cow-calf separation. Cow-calf contact on its own doesn't solve all social licence challenges, and people will still criticise the industry for other practices. I saw issues on some farms with health and welfare because of poor stockmanship, and managing weaning and the milk consumed by calves can be a challenge, and some farms will of course require significant capital investment. In many of the countries where cow-calf contact is growing, Johne's disease has been eradicated or has a very low prevalence. While we can't use Johne's as an excuse not to drive forward cow-calf contact, we must consider its impact and double down on its control. And of course, cow-calf contact is a novel idea, and there's relatively little research, particularly at the farm level. Modelling the financial impact of cow-calf contact on a dairy farm is difficult because you're applying a system that has many variables to farms that already have very different practices and costings. So I've built this simple model based on an average UK dairy herd of 180 all-year-round calving cows, implementing half-day contact and with industry standard KPIs for fertility, replacement rates and calf mortality. Based on this, there's a milk cost of just under half a penny a litre to cow-calf contact. But if surplus calf sales can be increased and labour savings made, a cow-calf contact system could bring a small profit before considering the capital costs associated with infrastructure investment. This model shows that it can be feasible, with the caveat that it relies on good management and control of milk consumption. And if anybody here would like to run through these costings in further detail, I will waive my consultancy fees and we can speak later. When I came back from New Zealand in January this year, we made the decision to trial a small-scale cow-calf contact system on the calves born at the end of our calving block. The 7 calves born in the last 3 weeks of calving were reared on their mothers with full contact before being sold off farm. They were kept in a close paddock and during milking had the options of entering the parlour, as you can see on the slide, waiting in a pen in the shed, staying in the fields or running riot around the yard. This coming year, we hope to replicate the trial and potentially expand it. And in the future, I'd like to run a full cow-calf contact system. Through my travels, I've found that cow-calf contact can be economically and practically feasible across a range of dairy systems without needing to sell added value products, although this is an attractive prospect for those with the skills and desire to do so. At a farm level, further research is needed to show best practice, and the industry needs to be careful to combine practice that is best for management with that which meets consumer needs and demands and expectations. In the future, I see that in the UK, there may be opportunities for farmers to sell milk under cow-calf contact labels without having to process it themselves, as is already seen in Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands. Through my work as a consultant, I hope to be in a position to advise farmers looking to make this transition by combining my knowledge gained through Nuffield with what I already know as a dairy farmer and a consultant. This scholarship wouldn't have been possible without the generous support of the Elizabeth Creek Charitable Trust, to whom I'm extremely grateful. I'd like to also thank the Nuffield for giving me this opportunity and the Anderson Centre for giving me the time away to do it. I couldn't have done it without Freddie, who not only put up with me being away from the farm, but also helped me implement some of these ideas when I came back and didn't complain too much about getting the calves out of the field. I'd like to also thank my fellow Nuffield scholars, past and present, particularly the 2021 cohort, my mentor, Jamie McCoy, and my Australian Nuffield partner, Lucy Collins. And also to all the farmers I'm extremely privileged to work with, and to my brother and father, who've always shown me that profitable dairy farming exists across all systems. You've just got to find a way to do it right. Although I do always say to them, they should be autumn calving. Thank you very much.